Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City of Lewiston's Board of Appeals meeting for Wednesday, August 30th. David, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Jeff Goslin?
Here.
Paul Vasili?
Here.
Dan Dubay? Here. Jim Horn?
Here.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we've got one item of new business for this evening, which is a petition for the appeal submitted by the Lewiston Housing Authority of Lewiston Auburn Area Housing Development Corporation for a variance at 490 Pleasant Street. Specifically, the request is for a variance of Lewiston's zoning and land use code minimum dwelling unit size requirement of 300 square feet to a variance of 282 square feet. Before we get started, I wanted to give everybody the opportunity to understand what to expect this evening. I'm going to give the city an opportunity to present their memo related to this request. I will then ask for the applicant to be able to make and speak to their request and allow the board to ask any questions. I will then give the public the opportunity to speak, and when I do so, I will ask that you state your name, where you reside, and then whether you are in support or opposed to the particular request. And I will be limiting those comments to 3 minutes, just to keep things moving along. Upon completion of that, the board will have the opportunity to review and deliberate on these items, and then we'll move forward towards votes. I want to remind everybody on the board that we'll be looking for findings of fact, and that this whole issue regarding the square footage will be the board's interpretation of those facts and adherence to the city's ordinance related to the square footage variance that is being requested. So with that, David, I'll ask if you'd like to get started and provide a summary of your memo, please.
Sure, thank you. Lewiston Housing Authority, Lewiston Auburn Housing Development Corp. has submitted a petition for appeal for a variance at 490 Pleasant Street. Specifically, the request is for a variance of Lewiston zoning and land use minimum dwelling unit size of 300 square feet to 282 square feet. The applicant is proposing to purchase the Ramada Inn and convert it into multifamily housing utilizing existing hotel rooms as dwelling units. The applicant notes that 80% of the rooms are currently sized at 282 square feet. Lewiston Housing is requesting a variance to have 282 square feet be the minimum dwelling unit size for 490 Pleasant Street. Article 8, Section 4D of the Zoning and Land Use Code limits requests for variance from strict enforcement of only the provisions of this code which relates to the space and bulk standards of the district regulations and/or floodplain management. The variance being requested by Lewiston Housing does not relate to either of these standards, rather is a request for a different interpretation of a definition found in Article 2. In such cases where the ordinance lacks specific reference to that request, the board is advised to follow 30A MRSA Section 4353, Section 4. Lewiston Housing Authority has turned to Lewiston's variance criteria of Article 9, Section 3B1, which mirrors Section 4353-4, while adding 2 extra factors: the variance not overlay impacting neighborhood properties regarding building placement, storage, parking, service areas, water flow, sunlight, and granting the variance should not hinder the public services access to service the property or adjacent property. When considering this appeal, the board must limit their review to the first 4 criteria consistent with state law. As per 30A MRSA 4353-4, the Board of Appeals may grant a variance only when the strict application of the ordinance to the petition and the petitioner's property would cause undue hardship. The term undue hardship as used in this subsection means A, the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. B, the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not the general conditions of the neighborhood. C, the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. And D, the hardship is not the result of the action taken by the applicant or prior owner. The applicant has specifically referenced each of these criteria as part of their application. I'm going to skip through a section here just to emphasize what the board really should be doing when they're considering a variance request in light of those 4 criteria that I just referenced. The board should keep in mind the following. When considering a reasonable rate of return, the applicant must prove that they will receive no reasonable return without the variance. They must show that they will be deprived of all beneficial use of the land. What this standards means is that they must show that the land is not suitable for any use permitted by the zoning ordinance. An undue hardship exists only if the property is unique to the property of the applicant. A problem is not unique if it is shared by other land in the highway business district. In Maine, at least, the courts reasoned that there is no unreasonable hardship when the applicant created his or her own difficulty by acquiring the land with knowledge of the use limitations. Hardship which is self-created is imposed by the applicant and not the ordinance. And the fact that the applicant has a personal problem which prompted the request for a variance is not legally relevant to the standard undue hardship test, no matter how sympathetic the board may be. The board can limit terms of any variance granted to that which is necessary to relieve the proven hardship as per Article 9, Section 6. The means by the board may place additional restrictions or modify the request as deemed necessary. It should be noted that Article 9, Section 9 specifically states that any right, including but not limited to variances secured by action of the Board of Appeals, shall expire if the work or change involved is not begun within 6 months or substantially completed within 1 year of such action. However, the board may grant one or more extensions of time, each not to exceed 1 year, if prior to the expiration of the applicable time, the petitioner files a written request with the board stating the reasons for such request. I'll just echo what the chair said. This is a request specific to the interpretation with respect to the dwelling area. That's what you folks should be limiting your discussion tonight, the 300 square feet and the variance to go to 282. There are representatives here from LHA to speak to their presentation.
Does anybody from the board have any questions for staff at this time? Hearing none, would the applicant like to support their application?
Kick it off. Thank you for having us tonight. Much appreciated. I'm Chris Kilmurray. I'm the Executive Director of Lewiston Housing.
My name is Silas Levitt. I'm the Development Project Manager for Lewiston Housing. So I'm just going to start us off by talking specifically to each of the variance criteria referenced, and then we can circle back around to focus more in on ones that the board has questions on. So starting with variance criteria A, that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted, including where strict application of the zoning ordinance would result in the practical loss of all beneficial use of the land. So the land in question as a hotel is currently only usable by hotel or housing use based on the sort of configurations of the existing buildings on the site. To make use of the property, any other developer besides Lewiston Housing would have to pay to purchase the building for $7.5 million, which is the purchase price agreed on in the current purchase and sale agreement, pay to tear it down, and then pay to rebuild on site. The cost of that making other sort of types of developments on the site unfeasible. We have attached in the packet a appraisal from Cushman and Wakefield detailing the current status of the site and underscoring that the highest and best use of the site is of multifamily housing. Just sort of some other prongs to this requirement. We have the broker for the hotel here to speak to this, but no other parties are interested at all in purchasing the property as it currently exists. Where Lewiston Housing is the only entity that can afford to buy it in its current state, and it cannot continue as a hotel without significant investment, which is unlikely to happen as the current rents and occupancy of the hotel does not support it. Also included in the packet are the roof and utility assessments showing the repairs need to be done to the property. So there's about 1.5 million estimated for repairs to the roof and another 1.3 million estimated in repairs to the electrical system for about $2.8 million total. And all this is to show that, no other hotel is interested in the site, is willing to purchase the site and put in the investment in the site to make it run, and that if they were to put that investment in, the rents don't support that site continuing. From a sort of multifamily housing perspective, in terms of other uses that the site is going for, this is not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison, but we're currently working on a 106-unit project downtown, the DeWitt project from Choice. The construction cost and acquisition cost for that is going to be roughly $50 million, and that's only possible due to the $30 million choice grant from HUD. And so to build the site to its maximum housing capacity, not as affordable housing, a developer would have to be willing to invest something like $50 million into the Ramada site to make it work as affordable housing. And the rents that you would be able to get in return for putting that in don't support any sort of beneficial return on the site.
And that's taking into account the fact that we had to go and get a $30 million grant from HUD to make that work. And the apples to apples not apples to apples, but the apples to oranges here is that we do have a $3.7 million grant that would be coming into this that would help us offset the cost and bring it down to a reasonable value for us to be able to make it operate. Without that $3.7 million that we're being granted, the acquisition costs and operation costs wouldn't match up, and it wouldn't be feasibly viable for us to move forward with the property.
Yep, and sort of to further on explain why the variance in this case is necessary, the only reason that this project currently works for us is due to that main housing money that's coming in. That money is time limited, and so the variance is the only way forward for this project to function.
We wouldn't be able to go through the process of getting a contract zone through the planning board and 2 readings at the city council in the amount of time before that $3.7 million would go away. Once that money goes away, the deal no longer makes sense financially.
Then to just sort of run through the other variance criteria, the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property, not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. So the need for this variance is entirely due to the sort of capital needs and financial situation of the existing property, due to the current use of a hotel, and not due to any general conditions in the neighborhood. Variance C, or criteria C, the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. The granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. That's what we believe. The site is currently a hotel and conference center. Afterwards, it would be used for residential use, and that's not a substantial change to the character. And then last item, the hardship is not the result of action taken by the petitioner or prior order. The hardship here is due to the timing situation from main housing and the past use as a hotel. It's not, the zoning standards for hotel and multifamily are different, and that's why there's a discrepancy here. We're asking for the variance due to the timing considerations from the main housing grant money, without which this project will not be able to happen, and due to the capital needs and existing nature of the site. No other use of the property seems possible without us doing the deal as it currently stands.
Yeah. Also, do we have any questions from the board for the applicant? Daniel?
Yes. Do we know the current yield or return on this property?
In terms of what the owner's making off of it,
yes.
His financials. I don't know what his financial situation. I know that he's looking to sell it. I know what he bought it for. I know what its assessed value is at. It denotes in there that it was purchased in 2019, I believe, for $6 million. Its current value is roughly $5.5 million. Looking at it as a hotel use, as a multifamily use, it matches the value of $7.5 million, which we have the appraisal for and the purchase and sale agreement on. In terms of his return on it, he's obviously looking to sell the property. I'm not sure exactly where his debt load is on the property, but we're looking at it from straight value and original purchase price in terms of where he's at.
I do have familiarity with hotels, and this has been a hotel and a viable hotel since 1975, is it not? As a hotel, you're not around for 40 years without it being viable with a reasonable rate of return. Is that fair?
It's fair. In this, the only reason, and I would fully agree with you, the only reason that we think that this is different in this situation is the significant capital needs associated with the hotel in this point in time. It's not necessarily if it would operate in all things equal, they aren't at this point in time. It's going to require significant upgrades to the hotel that don't appear to be viable with the current financial situation.
The current condition of the hotels, like some of the others across the state, probably have something to do with the way it has been operated over the last 24 months or so. Would that be a fair assessment?
I can't say for what time frame it is, but obviously if something isn't taken care of during that time frame, it is due to an operation.
Right. And I am familiar with, similar properties around the state that are being marketed and are getting under contract. There are people who are interested in doing some of those things. For a reasonable rate of return is subjective.
Right.
So,
That's the only reason we do have the agent here today who can attest to the fact that he has listed this property, and we were the only ones who stepped forward to purchase the property.
right. And it's hard to believe highest and best use, because I know how appraisers work. They do how the property is being appraised for it. So, which I presume it was that they were asked to do this for a multifamily. Is that correct?
They were asked to look at it from both directions because we knew this question would be coming. So we were asked to look at it from multifamily, but they did do it as hotel as well. That value is listed in there.
Okay. Other questions from the board? Yes, Phyllis.
I'm a little bit confused between the property analysis and the application. The application is requesting a variance on 95 rooms, and there are 22 other rooms that are 240 square feet. Excuse me. However, the property analysis says that, and I quote, "The sponsor is expected to convert the existing structure into a 117-unit affordable apartment complex." So how is that possible if the variance is for 95 rooms? 95 and 22 is 117, so.
Yeah, I can speak to that. It's part of our existing plans for the conversion to multifamily housing. So if the variance were to be granted, the 95 282 square foot rooms would just become efficiency units. We would be combining the 240 square foot rooms together to form one bedrooms, and then there are additional storage units and other rooms as part of the hotel that are not currently hotel rooms that can be repurposed and connected to rooms to form some larger rooms. So that's why it adds back up to 117 square feet. 117 total rooms. So it's not just the 282, it's not just the existing hotel rooms. Combining the 240 rooms gives you another 11, and then there's 3 or 4 storage units, and there's also a 2-bedroom property manager suite on the property that could also be converted to housing, and so that's what brings the total back up to 117.
And those rooms will be, they will not require a variance.
Correct, yeah.
Another question I have is, in the application, it states that that other types of development are infeasible. It says that regarding the site, and So I didn't see anything in my packet that showed me that other types of development were infeasible. How did you come to that determination?
We're basing it solely on the acquisition cost and redevelopment costs that we spoke to earlier. So the number, obviously, when we're looking at the dollars we had to put in with grant money to make the choice funding work, and the dollars we're having to put into this to make it work, and the fact that nobody stepped forward to buy the property other than us, we came to the conclusion that the additional uses would be infeasible.
So
I mean,
it's an assumption.
It's an assumption. I mean, getting down, I mean, there's no way that we would be able to empirically say for sure this has happened. There's always going to be somebody out there who might have, $6 million in their pocket that wants to throw it down and just say, this is the spot we're going to do it. But it seems unlikely, as they have not come forward thus
Well,
far.
Yeah, I was asking because in the property analysis, under the conclusion, it said the subject would most likely attract interest from developers. So,
And that's who we are, but we're also coming with $3.7 million of additional funds that aren't actually being included in the capital stack. We're not paying interest and principal and interest on those dollars.
Now, you said that the granting of this variance would not alter the essential character of the locality. So for the last 40 years, it's been a hotel and conference center. And you'll be putting 100 families, in theory, inside of rooms that are 280 square feet. Is that fair to
Fair.
say? Fair to say? And most of the neighboring homes and families are in single-family homes, is that
Correct.
correct? So you believe that that will not alter the essential character of that community?
I don't think it would, personally, doing this for a long period of time, I don't think it will have a major impact upon the character and how the number of people coming and going from the hotel. I think it would actually decrease the number of people coming and going from that location.
I have another question. Again, under the property analysis, under the highest and best use section, it said there's a sentence in here, this is, and I quote, "The reasonably probable use of property," oh, this is a definition of highest and best use, is defined as the reasonably probable use of property that results in the highest value. Is that the return, or just, what do they mean by the highest value of what?
I assume they mean the highest value of the end product.
It doesn't mean the highest amount of dollars can be brought in, like a profit, basically.
I would assume they would go part and parcel, so it would be both profit and value.
Okay. And how is this answer the first criterion that of reasonable return? That is one of the standards for granting a variance. Because a reasonable return is not the same as highest value.
Right. I mean, the inclusion of this is mostly to establish that the site is suited for multifamily housing development, and then that's pretty much the only use that it's suited for. That it also happens to be the highest use is just a bonus. In terms of the reasonable rate of return, just based on the cost of purchasing the building and tearing it down, any developer who wants to develop on the site would be looking at, like a $10 million hole even before they build a structure on the property to start trying to get a return. Based on this, the highest and best use would be filling it full of multifamily. So if you were to pack it full, as of right, if you were to build market rate units on the site, you could build up to 135 units. If you wanted to compare to a similar size project like the one we're doing downtown in DeWitt, that's about $50 million. If you're charging market rate rents for all of those units, you would still be paying back your initial investment in the property for the next, 20 or 30 years, and that doesn't include additional operational expenses on the site. So basically, the appraisal is showing that the most profitable use of the site is multifamily housing, and multifamily housing on the site only works if it's affordable housing. And the affordable housing portion that we're trying to do only works if we get the main housing money, which only works if we get the variance. And so if multifamily, being the highest and best use of the site, is not profitable just as market rate and only profitable as affordable, it shows that no other use of the site is going to have a reasonable rate of return, because it's not going to have a profitable rate of return, and no one's going to purchase and use the site if they can't make any money off of it.
This appraisal actually is fully premised off of that you can do this with the variance. The highest and best use is only if the variance is.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is 100%, and that's part of the conversation that we had even before we got here. I mean, it 100%, like, it's a dog chasing its tail right now. Like, one thing has to go to another.
I mean, again, this whole highest and best use is based on 300 square feet, for this, which currently you can't do.
Right. No, it is. There's
Yeah.
100%.
And that was put in place for a reason. That's kind of one of the hard parts about this board's purview is, we don't have the ability to look at why those ordinances were created in the first place.
Yep.
Go ahead, Melanie.
Would it be possible to rearrange the units so, like you said, you're combining some existing rooms? Would it be possible to rearrange so you meet the 300 square feet?
It's not.
Yeah, it's very expensive you lose rooms, and with that you lose every room you lose is a significant amount of money every single month, and the deal isn't exactly a money maker from the get-go. It works, but there's not a lot of room to be able to start pulling out, $12,000 a year at a clip per room.
Right, and furthermore, the sort of interior hallway that the rooms are on either side of is only 6 feet wide, which is about the minimum you can get for it to be still ADA compliant. And so you can't, it's also load-bearing walls on either side, and they're brick, so you cannot push the rooms out further into the hallway. So there's no easy way to address the 300 versus 282 discrepancy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, from our perspective, I should add, it's unfortunate that, roughly a space the size of this table is what we're talking about right now, which is the difference between, us having to be here and not. But here we are.
Other questions of the applicant?
I
Go
have
ahead,
a
I'm sorry,
question.
Jim. Yeah.
Could you explain multifamily use?
Yeah, it's housing for individuals or families, seniors, or multifamily simply denotes any type of housing for people to live in as their home.
Will there be applications that people have to fill out to get into this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's just like anything else that we would run, yes.
This is not for street people that are just moving in and going to move in and start living there. This is...
There's criteria associated with it. In our presentation we gave to the council during the workshop, our target group are people who are experiencing homelessness and or near homelessness, but there are still criteria to enter into that. There's a lease associated with it. So yeah, it's multifamily housing. It's just people who have experienced homelessness or are experiencing homeless right now.
Now, if there are families that apply and it's a 280 square foot room, what is going to be the maximum occupancy for something like that? Could my wife and I and 3 children, could we move into that and use cots and things in that 280 square foot for us to live in?
Honestly, we hadn't looked into occupancy standards in terms of total number of people that would be there. The secondary phase we need to talk about. I can tell you that there is an absolutely huge need out there right now for single parents with children that need a place to go, because there's currently any of the shelters we have right now do not allow children. And that's one of the big reasons that we looked at this site immediately, because the amount of people that we get calls about on a regular basis who are homeless and looking for places to go, who are mothers and fathers with, one or two small children, is incredibly sad, the amount of people that fall under. I believe there's upwards of 200 kids that technically defined as homeless that are in our high schools at this point in time too. So there's a fair amount of people out there. Occupancy standards would be the next thing we'd need to sort of talk to you guys about, but there would be an opportunity for us to be able to figure out how to get people in there. If it was two parents, we could split into 2 different rooms and give them each a subsidy. There's ways that we could work around it.
Mr. Kilmer, I'm going to try to keep it, because
I apologize. I just want to make sure I answer the question.
I know we asked the question, but I want to keep it to the square.
I apologize, yeah.
Because I certainly recognize there's some sympathetic.
Yeah, I'm not looking for the sympathetic piece.
But
there.
I want to keep it
Yep.
to what our.
Fair.
Yeah.
Paula, did you have a question?
Yeah. How are you planning on configuring these rooms to fit a stove, a refrigerator?
Small kitchenette, small studio size, just a very small kitchenette that would have a apartment size fridge, small stove, and a hood vent in there, which is required by code.
And how are you going to fit all those vents in when you've got a brick wall here?
It's roof, straight up.
Okay.
Yep, it'd be stacked.
We got to redo the roof at some point in time here. It's no better time than ever to do it when we're putting the stacks in.
So that's where it's affecting your HVAC, it's going to affect your electrical,
Yes.
Yes.
so you're bringing all that on yourself?
We do.
If
It would be
sold as a
phased.
hotel,
It would be phased. So we would do
That
do some
would be
quick kitchenettes right off the bat to be able to get people in there, and then we'd be looking to do a larger tax credit rehab on the property within 2 years, so that we could take care of the major capital needs associated with it. Our plan right off the bat, like we presented, would be to just put around $1 million into it to get stoves and kitchenettes in there and get it up to standard for what we'd have to do for life safety.
Other questions from the board for the applicant?
Have you been to the fire department yet to check with them in terms of egress, numbers of people that there are, sizes of escapes in the building?
It's only a 2-story building, so there's no need for escapes off of the back of the building. A second story a window is its own egress in multifamily.
Some of those things will come up in a different setting than
Okay.
today.
All right.
I'm going to keep again, our purposes is 282 versus 300 square feet.
Yep.
Other questions from the board for the applicant before I open this up for the public? Hearing none, I think we're all set for
Thank
now.
you.
Thank you. So with that, I will remind the public, I would like to ask if there's anybody here who would like to speak in support of the applicant for the variance from 282 to or from 300 square feet to 282 square feet for the property on 490 Pleasant Street. Let the record show that there's no one here to speak in support of the applicant at the present time. David? Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition of the proposed request for the variance? Sir?
Good evening. My name's Bob McCarthy. I live at 34 Regina Avenue. I'm the Ward 2 City Councilor. I want to go through a few things to dispute this appeal. One of the things it says that the highest and best use for this property would be multifamily housing, but that's, if you read through the proposal, it says that's based on an empty lot. That's not based on a hotel being there. That's based on an empty lot. So that's a whole different part of this equation. They're just confusing the subject there. Getting into some of the work involved. The bulk of the 1.3 million that's needed for the electrical upgrade is to convert to apartment buildings. It's not to keep it running as a hotel, it's to convert it to apartment buildings. So you can't take that as an expense for the hotel to keep running as a hotel. One of the other things I'm having trouble understanding is how they can get a variance for a property they don't even own yet. So that's a question. The neighborhood will be impacted greatly Because if you read through that, the highest and best use is based on that land having 337 units of housing on it. Not just a hotel, but there's land behind that they plan on building more multifamily housing, and they can build on that lot, according to that study, they can build 337 units of housing. Now, what is 337 units of housing going to do to the neighborhood that sits right next to it? The other thing to take into consideration is a large apartment complex like that, right at where people come off the turnpike. It's the first thing that some people will see in the city of Lewiston. As far as the hardship of this, the hardship is being created by themselves. They are buying the property as it is, as a hotel, and the hardship is converting it to multifamily housing. They're creating the hardship, and according to the ordinance, you cannot grant a variance if the hardship is due to the owner or the previous owner. So you have to take that into consideration. The other reason why I oppose it is the Ramada Inn is only one of 2 hotels in the city of Lewiston, and it's the only conference center in the city of Lewiston. They've talked about mothballing a large part of the building, so the large part of that building is going to go unused. The pool, the conference center, the restaurant, all of that. So that concerns me. And the last thing that concerns me is during our workshop with the city council, Director Kilmurray sat in that seat up there and said that if the council wasn't going to support it, they were not going to move forward with it. And I know of at least 4 councilors, including myself, that do not support this, and so he's going against what he said in front of the city council again.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you.
We've heard your comments, and again, I'm trying to keep the comments related to the variance between 282 and 300 square feet. Any other person would like to speak in opposition?
My name is Pauline Goodas. I'm a resident of the city of Lewiston.
I'm sorry, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Pauline Goodas, G-U-D-A-S.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
In order to get the variance, it has to meet the 4 criteria. The land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. How much marketing was done? I think with proper marketing, that land and that hotel could be sold, especially if it was done properly and maybe with the support of the Economic Development Department of the City of Lewiston. As far as the study as to what the best use would be, who did the study? Who paid for the study? If you're having your home inspected, if you're purchasing a new home, the last person that you want having the inspection done is the seller. The buyer is the one who's going to do it. This study was done for the Lewiston Housing Authority, so naturally it's going to be skewed towards what Lewiston Housing Authority wants done. Number 2, the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. If you read the property analysis that was done by the company out of Illinois, it basically says he's looking at putting 117 units if he can get the variance down to the 288 and some 240. But if you read further on, it states that he wants to put in, and it says the subject site supporting approximately 337 residential units as proposed by the sponsor. I'm assuming the sponsor is Lewiston Housing Authority. So rather than coming in and saying, we're going to put in 337, they're just sort of sneaking through the door asking for 117. The granting of a variance is the third reason. The granting of a variance will not alter the character of the locality. That is basically a single-family neighborhood. My understanding, and I have talked to several people that live in the neighborhood, right now the hotel is having 25 asylum seeker families currently living at the hotel, and I don't know who else is in there. And speaking to some of the neighbors, they have already started seeing more traffic in their neighborhood, people coming to their door asking for rides, asking for money, asking for food. If you put in 117 people, and they're skewing this development towards people who may need a place to stay, and I don't think anyone should be living in a tent, but we don't change a character of a neighborhood You're talking about putting potentially as many apartments, small apartments, in an area that has that many single-family homes. It will have a great impact on the neighborhood. The hardship is not a result of action taken by the applicant. As what Councilor McCarthy said, Lewiston Housing hasn't bought the property. No one is forcing them to buy the property. So what hardship is it? It's absolutely no hardship because they have no money invested other than what they spent to have an evaluation done that will skew and try to get people to vote their way.
Thank you, Ms. Gudis. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in opposition to the proposed project? Again, I want to keep comments. We do have, I guess I'll put it into record. We do have an email from Francesca Butot that was received by the city referencing similar comments as made by Ms. Gudis and Mr. McCarthy. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition of the proposed property or variance request? Hearing none.
Wait, there is a gentleman.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Gregoire. My voice is kind of hoarse because my larynx has been affected by acid reflux. So if you have a hard time hearing me, I'm sorry. I live on Mitchell Street. I have talked to a lot of neighbors on Mitchell Street. I know of 4 right now. 2 recently moved in that are planning on moving out. Another 2 are definitely moving out. Actually, there's one not on Mitchell that put up their house for sale after they heard about it. So this is definitely having an impact on the neighborhood. We've lived there for 51 years. So we've been there for a long time. We've seen it develop from our Mitchell Street used to be a drag strip. And it was actually marked off, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd hear racing going down the street. But that stopped when, they made it a dead end, which was nice. I just don't feel that. I'm kind of wondering why Lewiston House. I guess they passed up the DeWitt project because of the cost. I can understand that. But these folks that are there now need assistance, and they have to go downtown for the assistance. I mean, these people don't have cars, and they're going to be walking through the neighborhoods. They're going to be, like I said, one neighbor actually told me that, if somebody rang his doorbell and wanted a ride, they sit and actually relieve themselves on his lawn, has called the cops a number of times. We've had people set up tents in the backyard, but that was before the asylum seekers came in. So these were people that were homeless that were being set up there. And even though they had a hotel room, they set up
Yeah, sir, I'm empathetic to the situation we're describing. I'm trying to, it is really important because the purpose of this board is to evaluate the variance for the square footage. I understand those pieces, but I'm really trying to keep it to that. So if you wouldn't mind keeping it to the purpose of the difference between 282 square feet and 300 square feet.
I just don't see how you can fit a family in 282 square feet. You put a stove and a refrigerator in there. Granted, it's going to take up the space of that table, but leaving the space that's there now, I mean, with a couple of beds, and I think you get families in there that are 6 to a room now. I just can't see it being feasible. And like I said, it is definitely going to affect the neighborhood, and we're probably seriously thinking about moving out as well, even after 51 years. We plan on staying there till we pass on, but
Thank you, Mr.
things are
Gregoire.
going to change.
Thank you, Mr. Gregoire. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in opposition, would have something further to add in relation to opposition to the applicant?
Hi. My name is Patty Russell, and I live on Ashmount Street. And for many years, my ex-husband was in the Navy, and we spent a lot of time in hotel rooms during traveling at different times. And 282 square feet is a very small area, and 300 square feet is a very small area. I just want to personally say that I am not for this idea. I think that as this gentleman talked about, and even Mr. Horn, I believe it was, talked about, you know, have we talked about how many people can go in these rooms to begin with? Because as we all know, a lot of families do end up with a lot more than just 1 or 2 people. And 1 or 2 people in a hotel room is one thing, but if you have more than that in 300 square feet, that's not very much. And so I just wanted to state my opinion that I don't think it's a good idea, and I don't think the whole idea is a good idea. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. Again, is there anybody else who'd like to speak? Yes.
My name is Kathy Poland. I live on Ashmount Street as well. And right up the street from me is a daycare center with a lot of little children. And their backyard will be backing right toward the Ramada. I don't think this is a good idea, what's being proposed. Whether it's 288 square feet or 300 square feet, doesn't really matter to me. It's a lovely community, very friendly, very easily able to go out and walk, and there are women with baby carriages and runners and kids, and this is not the place to do this project. And I just want to say thank you to these people who have spoken, because they laid it out. I couldn't have laid it out like that. I can only just give you my personal opinion. But I would be very disappointed to hear that you voted to accept this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Jeanette, and I live on Lisbon Street. And it would change the neighborhood quite a bit. My vehicle was broken into this past winter when you were sheltering the homeless. So you can just imagine how they're roaming the neighborhoods at night. And, you know, you were saying about the venting for the stoves. I mean, there's 2 floors. So yeah, you could probably vent the second floor. What about the first floor? And again, the egress windows. As a homeowner, I'm required to have an egress window because you have to have 2 points of exit. And when you have that many people in one room, I mean, that doesn't make sense. And I think the goal is, like the mayor of Auburn, he wants to convert the PEX building or the LL Bean building into luxury units so that they can have young professionals or, traveling nurses or students from CMMC live in these luxury apartments. They're trying to redefine downtown Lewiston. So what does that mean? You're gonna redefine downtown Lewiston, but bring all that stuff into neighboring neighborhoods like ours. And I don't think that's right. And I would think that's nepotism for the mayor of Auburn, who owns these buildings, to go forward with these luxury apartments.
Thank you, Jeanette. I don't have a last name, so what was your last name, ma'am?
Montgomery.
Montgomery, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in opposition of the proposed request? Hearing no other public comment, I'll close the public portion of the evening and bring it to the board for deliberation. Again, just want to remind the board that we're going to be focusing on findings of fact. We have 4 items that to essentially define the term undue hardship, which would be, which all need to be affirmative for the applicant to receive the variance. So with that, I want to make sure that our interpretation of the findings of facts are clear. I guess I'm going to ask if there's any, again, this is just for board deliberation, board conversation before I open up for a roll call vote. The first item was the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted. From my perspective, I've got enough familiarity. It's been a hotel for 40-something years. There is a reasonable return, as it stood there now. There's a reason why 300 square feet was put in place to begin with. It's where it should stay, but I'll defer to others.
I
Any
agree
other
with
comments?
you that all those years it's been a hotel, but it's not gonna be a hotel anymore. It's not gonna be something where people are gonna go and just be there for 2 days. They're gonna go there and they're gonna live there for a year. Can you imagine living in a room with 2 kids, a mother and a father, for 300 square feet? You can't do it. You couldn't even live in your own garage.
So, but again, coming back to the same point that
It is, that I do not believe it's
There is a
300
reason.
square feet. If they want to put them both together, make 600 square feet out of the unit, then I think that maybe you can talk about it. But 300 square feet, there's no
without
way to move to
the
280.
variance. Any other comment regarding item A?
Yes, I think the evidence is clearly insufficient to support a finding that there cannot be a yield at reasonable return. We clearly have not been presented with enough information about the return that is being produced by that property. I suspect, as you do, that a reasonable return can be made from that property, and we have no evidence that a reasonable return is not being made from that property.
Without the variance, without the variance,
Yes.
Okay,
I agree.
okay. So I'm going to start with a roll call vote for item A unless anybody else has a comment for this. David, would you please hold a roll call vote for item A that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless a variance is granted? I'm going to ask each person of the board to provide their answer, either yes or no, and or why, and with a brief statement as to why that is the case. So,
And would you like us to start with the chair?
yeah, I would like you to start with the chair.
Jeff Goslin.
I believe that the answer to this is no, that there is a reasonable yield that can be achieved without the variance granted.
Paul Maselli.
No.
Any reasoning with that?
I think if we had someone buy the hotel as a hotel, it would be better for this community. We cannot lose that conference center, and we need the entertainment area. We have nothing in Lewiston, so that needs to stay as is.
And just to be clear, when I'm looking for that criteria, and the reasoning for, ideally, you folks would be limiting your reasoning to the specific variance criteria being asked, and at this point, it's
Yeah.
whether it has a reasonable return unless the variance is granted, so. Dan Dubé.
I would deny the petition on that ground. The burden of proof on that has not been met, for the reasons I cited in my comments.
Jim Horn.
Ditto.
Thank you. Melanie Dorn.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that there can be a reasonable return without the variance, since it's a functioning hotel at the moment, or has been for a long time.
So that's a no.
Yes.
Sorry, I wanted to make.
That's a
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. And Phyllis Rand.
My response is no. We have no proof that a reasonable return cannot be received unless a variance is granted. We have no evidence.
So the vote on the first one was 6-0 no.
So as we move into item B, I'm going to actually, instead, I'm going to start with the roll call vote. We'll do the vote, and you can provide your comments at the same time. Is the board okay with us doing that?
Yes.
So item B is the need for a variance is due to the unique circumstances of the property and not to the general conditions of the neighborhood. David?
Mr. Goslin?
For me, the answer is no. First of all, the unique circumstance of the property is almost any property around the state of Maine. You would have to do substantial changes to it to meet certain codes and et cetera. And there should just a variance for the purposes of the cost is not necessarily a reason for making the variance. So the answer is no, the chair.
Paula Maselli?
No. Ditto, Jeff.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Same as.
Okay, thank you. Dan Dubé?
I believe this factor has been supported by the evidence. It was built at 282 square feet, that the property is as is. It's a unique circumstance that it might be transitioned over to 300 square feet. That said, I'm still, although I believe that factor has been supported, all four factors of 30 MRSA 4353 subsection 4 have to be met, and for that reason I still would vote to deny the appeal.
Daniel, just for the purposes of this particular one, are you saying this is supported though with a pro yes? We'll do a formal vote.
To this factor, I would say yes.
So you have a yes, David.
Jim Horn?
No, reason is that they don't own the property, and if that gentleman said that you had to own the property first, they don't own the property, how do you give them a variance to it? That's my reason for no.
Melanie Dorn?
My answer would be no. I don't believe this criteria has been met. I don't think it's a unique circumstance to this property.
Phyllis Rand?
I believe that, yes, this criteria has been supported in the information that we've received.
Thank you, David. Thank you all. Item C, the granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the locality. There's a substantial difference between the 100-plus units of 280 square feet for families in a neighborhood that is essentially, all single-family homes. It is hard for me to say that there would be that meets the character, that it would not alter the essential character of that neighborhood. I am a no.
Paula?
I'm a no. We have very few neighborhoods left in Lewiston, and I'd like to see the neighborhood stay.
Thank you. Dan Dubé?
No, that factor has not been met for the reasons cited by the chair, as well as the reasons cited by various persons from the community and the neighborhood speaking today.
Jim Horn?
No. Ditto.
Thank you. Melanie Dorn?
I think this has been met. It's used as a hotel now, and I believe that it wouldn't change the character essentially. It might a bit, but I think this has been met.
And Phyllis?
No, I think that it would change the character, the essential character of the locality.
Thank you.
Thank you. The last item is item D, which is that the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner. This is relatively straightforward, that there's no unnecessary hardship when an applicant has created his or her own difficulty by acquiring land with the knowledge of the limitation that's in place. The applicant, or any applicant, would know that the square footage requirement for multi-family housing would be 300 square feet. This is 282. This is a decision made by the applicant to accomplish the goal of creating multifamily housing. I am a no.
Paula?
I'm a no for the same reason. When you purchase something, you know what you're able to do with that property prior to purchasing it.
Dan Dubé?
Yes, I believe this has been met. It's an historical accident that these were built as 282 feet versus 300. I do have some concerns that the repairs indicated would be due to inaction by the prior owner, and the cost and extent of those repairs, and I think that inaction constitutes an action taken by a prior owner under this paragraph, but I think based on the information we have available, that yes, this has been met.
Jim Horn?
No. And I'll give you a quick answer to that. I feel like that Lewiston Housing Authority has been put under the gun, knowing that they really want to take care of an issue that we have in the city of Lewiston. With people being evicted, with the price of rents going up, it's difficult at best for a lot of people. I think that this was not well thought out in terms of what it is. I think they were trying to meet an obligation or a way of funding, and I commend them for doing that. But I don't think that there was enough evidence. I don't think that the background was done. I don't think that there was enough information provided us nor for them to move this forward. And I think just after talking to the fire department today, I think they might have had a problem when it comes to size in terms of occupancy sizes. So I'd rather see them find out what it is that is going to prevent them and make their make living in a 280 square foot room won't meet the letter of the law with the state fire marshal. So I guess that's a long-winded answer to no. I think that they need to rethink it and not be pushed to try to meet a grant.
Melanie?
I do not think they've met this criteria. I believe this was a hardship that they would have been aware of.
And Phyllis?
No, I believe that the hardship is being created by the applicant in full knowledge of the square footage of the property that they are interested in purchasing. So my answer is no.
Okay. Those four items are very clear. As a result, we're going to take one final vote. I'm going to be looking for a motion from the board to deny the petition for appeal submitted by the Lewiston Housing Authority's Lewiston Auburn Area Housing Development Corporation for the variance at 490 Pleasant Street. Specifically, the request is for a variance of the Lewiston Zoning and Land Use Code minimum dwelling unit size requirement of 300 square feet to 202 square feet. Can I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Daniel has made the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Paula. All in favor of denying the petition as proposed, say aye. Aye. Actually, I want a roll call vote. I'm sorry, I'm skipping over. We'll do the roll call vote. I'm sorry, David, my fault.
Not a problem. Melanie Dorn?
Aye.
Phyllis Rand?
Aye.
Jeff Goslin?
Aye.
Paula Maselli?
Aye.
Dan Dubé?
Aye.
Jim Horn?
Aye.
6-0 to deny the variance.
Okay, so that takes care of the first and only item on the agenda, other than the reading of the minutes. David, as part of the board here, I would encourage that for future conversations, I would advise the planning board to consider if this is something that they want to consider a smaller square footage size for multifamily dwellings for anything in the future. I think it should be something that we should get some guidance from what the planning board would like to see in the future, not through the Board of Appeals. Fair?
Yeah, that's, any amendments, regardless if folks think the size is too big or too small, you're right, the Board of Appeals isn't charged with making that determination. That's something that would be amended by the planning board with final action by the council.
Fair enough. Thank you. We have one last item on the agenda for this evening, which is the reading of the minutes from July 5th, 2023. Are there any comments related to the minutes from 2023 or any changes?
I move we accept the
Move
minutes.
to accept them by Phyllis, seconded by Daniel. Anyone opposed? Or all in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none. We've got that passed. Is there any other business for the Board of Appeals this evening?
None.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn.
Okay.
Moved by Daniel, seconded by Paula. All in favor? Aye. Done. Thank you, everybody.